Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it is with gratitude to Hashem that we're able to welcome a new Sefer Torah into our community here in Beverly Hills. Thank you for participating in this Simcha, and thank you in particular to Rafi and Rivka Nissel for having facilitated this beautiful Hachnasat Sefer Torah today. We've already begun to celebrate a little earlier on when we wrote the closing words, closing letters of the Sefer Torah assisted by the Sofer. Then we danced through the streets of Beverly Hills. You witnessed history today.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah
You may be seated.
ועל ציון משכן כבודך, ועל מלכות בית דוד משיחך, ועל הבית הגדול והקדוש, אוי רחם ועל ציון משכן כבודך ועל מלכות בית דוד משיחך ועל הבית הגדול והקדוש אוי רחם רחם משכן כבודך אוי ועל מלכות בית דוד משיחך ועל הבית הגדול והקדוש אוי רחם רחם רחם.
You didn't listen to it, but let me tell you, this was my father's favorite song, Rachem, Rachem. In the last couple of months that he was in the hospital, he would always tell me, call Avshalom Katz, call Avshalom Katz. I would like to hear Rachem. So, you heard it in the background. I would put Avshalom Katz onto my cell phone, put the cell phone to my father's ear, and say, here, Papi, Avshalom Katz is singing Rachem for you. Before I begin, I would like to express my gratitude. There's a few friends who helped me to create this event. I have a friend, Debbie Segura, who held my hand along this project to create this mantle, the needle point for our Torah. Just to go to a wedding, which is important too. Every stitch is a story I saw to myself while working on this important piece. Benjamin, the director, producer of this evening, who at times received emails from me early in the morning and didn't mind it at all. Thank you. Nati Baram, who in the early stages in our new shul helped to establish a link to Hashem by being the most wonderful Shaliach Tzibur for all of us. Besides that, he discovered that our grandson, Eli, has a range of voice higher than a high C. Thank you, Nati. Shoshi, don't hide. Shoshi Kreitenberg, who helps me with my writing, who encourages me to continue to write, even though at times it's very hard to do. To my family members, Rita, who flew in with her children, Yoni and Esther. My sister Mona, who holds my hands every step of the way throughout my life. Mona. My Brudi, Tommy. And my dear sister-in-law, Miriam, who made the shidduch between Erez and Ricky, and we are forever grateful to you. Avromi, the eldest son, who flew in from New York with little Ephraim, who, by the way, was named after my young cousin, who perished in Auschwitz, singing Ani Mamim on the way. Avromi, with his wonderful wife Shani, thank you for coming. Where's Yuda? Then we have Yuda, the second son of Tommy, with wife Suri and their 4 kids, who live next door to Erez and Ricky in Lakewood. Thank you, Yuda and Suri. One of Tommy's daughters lives right here in Los Angeles, Racheli and Shua, with their 4 children. Thank you, Tommy and Miriam, for letting Racheli choose a California boy. Then we have the Spinner and the Bolak family. The ones who flew in is Joel Spinner, who flew in from Berlin with her daughter Nechama. Thank you, Joel and Nechama. Speaking of Berlin, her little sister Fiona is here, and she came on her own, and I'm grateful the Gorelik family let you participate in our beautiful Simcha. Thank you, Fiona. David and Nurin, who live here in Los Angeles, and I consider them like my children, and Madi and Salomon and little Emily Pesele are my grandchildren. Yeah. Then we have our sons, Zvika, who is here alone tonight. His wife, unfortunately, had to travel to New York. Her father is not in a good place, but we are praying for him to have a refuah shalema. He gave us 2 beautiful grandchildren, Zelik and Oli Pesele, who probably are running around here. Then we have Jaime and Dalia, who have 3 beautiful grandchildren given to us. Eli, with his gorgeous voice, Elizabeth, and Ilani. You fulfilled your dream, Jaime. You live in Eretz Israel. Thank you. Thank you for enduring for this special occasion. All right. I don't even know where I am. Erez, Ricky, Chayele, Hillel, Nusi, and baby Leah. Thank you for staying with us and completing our Simcha with your presence. To my dear husband, Rafi, what a gift of a Torah. Thank you for going along with me and not just having a Kiddush in Shul, but agreeing to present this beautiful garden with pink lights, flowers, and Pat's food. I'm a bit different, but at the end of the day, I do hope that I'm worth it. Last but not least, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you. Thank you for letting our parents survive and establish this unbelievable family, which I'm going to present to you now. I'm going to take a deep breath now. Okay. With your permission, I would like to take you on a journey to the early 60s when our family resided in Vienna. We had close relatives in Budapest, the Senesh family, and yes, we are related to Hannah Senesh. But that's another story. In a romantic house on a street called Rejutir Harom. This is my father. You hear in the background singing a song about the reason why he survived.
Lirais is choyechoidecho. Okay, bakoidesh. Chaz is siyechu. Lirais is choyechoidecho. Es megsam tinkel, es megsam finster, ich verlier nicht mein Betuchen. Eis rulikel, man nummen, weil ich als trugen, chotschig metit mich harim jugend. I kein bakoidesh, Chaz isichu, lira isischu ichvaydechu. Oy kein bakoidesh, Chaz isichu, lira isischu ichvaydechu. Es mag sein Dinkel, es mag sein Finster, ich verliere nicht mein Betuchen. Eis Rulikel, mein Numen, weil ich hat's trugen, Chatschig, mentit mich harim Jugend. Ein kein Bakoidesh, Chaz isichu, lira isichu yichvaydecho. Kein bakoidesh, Chaz isichu, lira isichu yichvaydecho.
All right. Basically what he's saying, nobody can take away the bitachon, the belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody. In the deepest dark and the biggest horrors, they're chasing me, but I'm not losing it, the belief in Hashem. In a romantic house on a street called Reshit Yeharom, my great-grandparents established a home for a few orphans and a shul, which contained 3 Sifrei Torah. After the war, these holy scripts were locked away in a built-in cabinet and kept there for protection. The relatives who survived the war and continued living there were my great-aunt and Tante Piri, who was the sister of my grandfather, a grandfather who I never met. Tante Piri's only son, Senesh Ivan, a very famous songwriter in Hungary, his wife, Marie, and daughter Andrea Senesh. This is my great-grandmother and Tante Piri. The relatives, one day, when I was about 6 or 10 years old, it was between that, in the early 60s, my father told me that we would go on a trip to Budapest with his best friend, Buyu, to retrieve one of the 3 Sifrei Torahs which were in the Senesh home. This is Reshit Yeharom, the home which still exists, and this is my family. In front of this, it's a picture postcard, really, and the nanny or something looking out the window. The issue of the 3 Sifrei Torah was talked about a lot in our home, because my parents were eager to restore glory to them and have them utilized in its proper way. Pimpi, that's my nickname in case you didn't know, you come along for the trip and you visit your aunt Tante Piri. As we were driving back on the way from Budapest to Vienna, I remembered the many train rides we already took as a family. We rode for hours in our compartments without speaking. Mommy would say, "The walls have ears." We were scared because Mommy talked about the communists who placed listening devices in the walls, behind our seats, and even in the hotel rooms where we would stay. While on the train, we silently watched the landscape roll by, waiting in utter angst for the vile communistic Hungarian conductor to enter, whose drab uniform with the red star on the cap made us shiver. "Anything to declare?" he would ask. And if one was especially nasty, he would rummage through our suitcases, our personal things, like a hungry bear looking for something edible. This kind of fear settled into my mind while in the car with our precious Sefer Torah, wrapped in a blanket in the trunk of Buyu's car. The Hungarian regime did not allow to take historic items out of the country. Will we succeed to save our precious Torah? At the border between Hungary and Austria, a place called Hegye Shalom, Buyu drove to the side, parked his car, and with a plastic sack which contained whiskey and cigarettes, he approached the tiny house where the custom officers were busy doing their job. Papa and I waited anxiously for his return. He returned a few minutes later, a smile painted on his face, and we knew he was successful in his mission. Nobody checked the trunk of our car. Once we arrived in Vienna and placed the Sefer Torah in my father's beloved shul in the Grünanger Gasse, the first thing my mother said was, "I am going to sew a dress for my baby." She referred to her family heirloom, and with the dress, she meant the mantle. Our MUTI had plenty of fabric remnants at home, and for the first mantle, she picked a light pink silk satin with cold gold trimmings. This is the Regiteur house where we went on a trip with my father, Avrumi, and my brother Tommy, Joel, and Fiona to visit the Senesh family. It was in the late 90s. Oh my gosh. Okay. We were one of the few to own a Sefer Torah in our community. And on Simchat Torah that year, our Torah was exposed for the first time in its pink outfit, and we were so proud of our father when he danced around the shulchan with our prized possession. Now please, don't forget, my mother's family had 3 Sifrei Torahs in their home. Fast forward to the 60s, to the year 2010. By the hand of God, Senesh Ivan, my mother's first cousin who lived in this Budapest home, passed away within 2 hours of my mother's passing. We all thought it was a very interesting coincidence. After the Shiva in Vienna, my sister Mona said, "Now it's the time. We have to travel to Budapest and visit Andrea, to be Menachem Uvel for passing of her father, and to discuss the issue of the remaining 2 Sifrei Torah." We felt like we would fulfill our mother's last wish. We hired our driver, Herr Sotola, who drove us to Budapest. The mood in the car was somber. All of us were not very optimistic about achieving our goal, but we had to give it a try. Papa sat in front, and the 3 of us in the back seat, Mona, brother Tommy, and I. Things have drastically changed in Hungary since communism had fell, and the fear we possessed at that time has all but evaporated into thin air. But another feeling set into my heart, a tremendous feeling of loss, a void, which engulfed my heart, settled there, and I thought would stay like this forever. The loss of our dear MUTI. We reached our destination, and Andrea, Senesh Ivan's daughter, welcomed us. We settled among the dining room table, exchanging mutual sentimental thoughts in regards of mourning. At one point, we had to talk tachles, and Tommy took over. He tried to explain to Andrea how important it was to utilize a Sefer Torah in a place like a shul. She answered us, "Like my father, I will keep them right here, in the family home." And we understood the strong attachment of the Senesh family to these two Sifrei Torahs. That was it. I said to myself, let's drive back. The scent of wet leaves filled my nostrils, and in slow pace, I walked behind my family to the car to start the drive back to Vienna. At least we tried. We all agreed on that. A couple of years later, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but I turned 60. My husband, Rafi, presented me with this wonderful gift, a Sefer Torah that would be written in memory of our dear parents. He took such care and so showed such devotion to this project in making sure that the sofer was the right fit. What kind of writing, what shade of material, what method. I learned so much from this process. It seemed to me that it was the preparing for the arrival of a new baby. We have come a long way to reach this important point in history. I have skipped a milestone on this journey. Me becoming part of the Nissel family. This evening is also dedicated to my beloved mother-in-law, who I refer to as Ima. What I missed most when she passed away was her tales of Rafi when he was a little boy. She described him like a Jewish mother would do, a handsome genius who was capable to rule the world. Benjamin, let's roll and show our friends what happened on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, April 1974. Keine Musik, you better clap. There's no music. It was super 8mm film. Yes, amen. Okay, Rafi, next swipe. You're in charge now.
I'm really happy that my sister came all the way back from Israel, and she will tell you a little bit more to my mother than I ever knew about it. She continued living there a long time after I left the house. So Rita, please come say a few words.
Good evening, friends and family, Kvod HaRabbanim, Brigadier General Israel Shafir, and Simcha Salach, who is the executive director and founder of the Israeli Air Force Foundation, who I've just met, and I'm sure my mother would have been very proud to have met her too, as well as my father, a lady who is taking care to help the Israeli youth in danger to become a promising part of the Israeli society through the Israeli Air Force. So I'm very happy and proud that my brother found such well-known people, good people here. Dear friends and family, tonight I would like to make a toast to my mother, a toast to life. For those who know her, I don't have to explain too much who she was, they know. But those who have not met her, it would take hours to explain. It would take hours to explain what a wonderful, charismatic, complex, beautiful person and humble person she was. A lady, a mother, a businesswoman, and a most loyal friend, 24 hours, 7 days a week. The best friend you could ever have. A woman who combined the old and the new, open to new ideas, and never forget where she came from. Actually, she came from quite an aristocratic family, But still, she always taught me, the diamonds from the ring will never fall off if you wash the dishes. She was intellectually religious. She loved traditions, and she loved the stories of the Bible, and especially loved stories of Shir HaShirim. She believed and trusted in Hashem, and she was always very happy to prove that one could combine the Torah with the modern science, history, and technology. We had a home of books, of romances, of biographies, but of mathematics and also fairy tales. Everything was allowed, everything was open, and everything was open for discussion. She loved music, modern and old. She loved art, operas, and movies. In short, she loved life. And mostly what I would like for you to know, that she loved life in every way, Jewish life and everything it has to do with it. She loved to laugh, and we used to sit very often nights to laugh so much that the tears would roll down. Unfortunately, though, she became sick very young. For us, it was very young. She was only 58. But I never heard her complain, and always she was continuing in her quest in search for the wonders of life. And this included never forgetting those who were likely to be forgotten by society, the old and the sick, especially in the German community. She used to work all day long, and she was very elegant for those who remember her. Like Greta Garbo, maybe the young people here won't really know who she was, but she was a lady, and she used to work, and in the evening go to Bikur Cholim, sitting and listening to these people who supported, to support them. She was also the mother of the delegates of the Israeli embassy, providing homemade food for those who wanted, and kosher food, which was not so readily available then in Köln-Bonn. And she was, sorry, I'm a little bit excited. English is not my mother tongue. And she helped, and she had a listening ear for everybody. There's one moment I would like to share with you. There are so many moments which was hard to choose, but now you will know why I chose this especially moment. One moment, my mother burst into my room, and she said, we did it, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, we did it, when I was a very little girl, we rescued them. What happened? It was the morning of the operation in Tebe. My mother was so proud and so full of love for the country of Israel that I decided to call my son Yonatan after Yoni Netanyahu. I wanted to inspire him with the love and optimism my mother had, and for Israel and the army, and for himself and his future life. Well, I always wondered if the world was not big enough to hold also my mother and my kids at the same time together. But I guess, since being up there, she made sure, first of all, that I have the best brother in the world with a great sister-in-law, and second, that I have the 3 best kids anybody could have. One is Esther, and Yoni, and Dan, as my brother said, who is in Israel. Okay. I'm sure tomorrow I will regret, and even 5 minutes after I go down the podium, the many things which I have not told you about my mother. So what I would like you to keep in mind about my mother and to think about is that my father, who inspired us to learn something new every day, and he was actually not only a businessman, he was a big dreamer, and he really loved learning, and something we had very much in common with my mother. And from my mother, to see the good in people, to love life, to cherish our loved ones, and not to let one day pass to have a good laughter with anybody we love together. Also, thank you very much, and I would just like to mention that Sarah's father, like Rivka said, is sick, and I would like him to have lots of success tomorrow. And also I just saw David Bolak has his father's kippah on, a memory of Reuben Bolak, who has also gone from us very short period ago. So thank you very much, everybody, to come here.
Chazal Nati will sing now Kerman Arachamim in the memory of our mother, Esther Malka, Bat Lav Zvi, Alea Shalom.
אמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים. לנשמת אסתר מלכה בת זאב וצבי שהלכה לעולמה בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמתה.
Thank you, Nati. I believe that my niece now is coming to introduce a song that was very important to my mother, Alea Shalom. Esther.
Dear Savta, although I have never met you, I have the honor of carrying your name. As I grew up, I always felt the responsibility of having your name. Your strong character who inspired others, your kindness and good heart that guided you through life, your grace and humbleness that shaped all of our family. As I grew older, I knew I had to push myself forward in order to respect the name I was given. Although I was not lucky enough to meet you, I can feel and imagine your being through Ima's memories. I'm honored to carry your name and will always aspire to follow your path of living. We're all lucky to have you watching us from above. One of the ways we remember you is by this special love song that you and Saba loved and cherished. It's Yadid Nefesh.
Anybody who know the song can join in. Thank you, Nati. Also special thanks to Rabbi Yossi Kunin and Lior who helped us write the enhancement for the music. Without further ado, Nati, maybe you can sing another song for my mother, Laila Laila.
Just a short explanation about this song. It's written by Chaim Nachman Bialik. It's a very special song. It's a lullaby song. But it's very strange that it's almost like reminding the Grimm brothers legend, because from a lullaby it started to be like a horror stories in the middle. But people saying, and I'm quoting the song, Echad b'cherev ve'echad nitraf b'cherev, it's reminding it's a hint that Chaim Bialik put for as a reminder of the tefillah of Netaneh Tokef. So we can start. בדרך אלייך, לילה, לילה, רחבו חמושים. נומי, נומי, שלושה פרשים. נומי, נומי, שלושה פרשים. לילה, לילה, נומי, נומי, שלושה פרשים. לילה, לילה, נומי, נומי, שלושה
My grandmother had a short but eventful life. She hailed from the Alteheim, from Transylvania, Hungary. Born on the same day that Malkat Esther besieged Achashverosh to rescue Persian Jewry from a genocide in Iran and then Persia, her parents named her Esther Malka, just like my cousin, Esther Malka, who spoke so beautifully. In the Megillah, Esther is described as someone with the characteristic of chen, as being loved by all. Vatahi noset chen b'nei kol ro'ea. Similarly with Savta, all who knew her loved her, and we certainly did. The gematria of chen, chet and nun, is 58, the same number of years that my grandmother lived before she went on her way. However, from the Shoah through the Tkuma, she was able to achieve greatness and great achievements in the few years that she was with us, more than most of us are able to achieve in our statistical 70 years. Like the teenaged Malkat Esther, to survive a genocide, my grandmother had to hide and even to disguise herself as a Gentile. She walked streets filled with Nazis and Hungarians in order to feed her family, bring them scraps of food from the street. After the war, she married Saba, moved to Israel, made Aliyah, and she built the state of Israel with him. Savta had many virtues, including love of Israel and chesed. But to me, chief among these virtues was her love of family. Whether it was attending my soccer games to instill me with a sense of confidence that she likely never knew, or it was piling up my plate with my favorite food, fish sticks with ketchup, or it was giving me special presents such as my special sleeping pillow, which is now my son's special sleeping pillow. She was always there to help build us up. She was a source of strength as much as she was one of warmth. I was 10 years old in 1985 when my grandmother passed. Her parting was the first tragedy of my life, fortunately. As a 10-year-old, the most memorable aspect of this loss was the example that my father, my aunt, and my mother set about how to deal with tragedy. There was no act, treatment, or bracha that was not employed to save Savta. I remember the weekend, the Shabbat before her passing, my father, who's not known for being a Hasidic a man, sent me to the Ger Rebbe to kiss his finger and to ask for a bracha. Finally, Savta was a quiet but strong benefactor of the Jewish institutions and often vocalized her belief in the importance of strengthening the Jewish community after the losses we endured in the past century. This evening we have among us leaders of American and Israeli Jewry. One such leader is Rabbi Stephen Weil. Welcome back to Los Angeles. I'm sure your trip to Spain was special. As head of the Orthodox Union, Rabbi Weil is on the front lines of Jewish survival, helping to ensure that we do not endure the same fates as the Jewries of Spain and Hungary. In comparison to the past 2 millennia of Jewish history, the current state of global Jewry is nothing short of miraculous. I'm not sure what a miracle is, but we have seen some pretty incredible acts of God in the past several decades, from the founding of the State of Israel to the raid of Entebbe, which took place almost exactly 40 years ago, as my Tante Rita just mentioned. Please welcome Rabbi Weil, who will share with us his insights into that raid and the nature of a miracle.
Zvika, thank you very much. To Rivka, to Rafi, to the extended Lieberman family, the extended Nissel family, this is a very powerful and special evening. And Bershut, the Rabbanim who are here, Bershut, the Brigadier General who is here. It's an honor to be with you and to share the evening with you, Brigadier Shafir. And as well, we want to welcome the Rabbanit, the Rebbitzin of 100,000 Jews. You know, we all have our little stellars, But Rafi and Rivka's niece Joelle and her husband Josh, what they're doing for what Elie Wiesel referred to as the Jews of silence. I have the great honor of working with them, and they're the real ones on the front line. It's an honor to be here. Rita mentioned, as well as Tzvika, as well as Rafi, about Ima, the role that she played, ultimately solidifying German Jewry, building Jewry after the war, and the role that not only as a businesswoman, but as a communal leader in Chesed, the building of the State of Israel, and the building of Am Yisrael. And her passion, which was the building of Am Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael, that passion is reflected in the lives of her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. Tonight, as well as to commemorate the Liebermans, we had the beautiful Sifrei Torah, the Siyum, the talk that Rivka gave us. We're commemorating the Yortzeit of Ima Nisso, with her children and grandchildren. And one of the events that shaped her life as a builder of Israel is something that all of us have observed and are commemorating this summer, the 40th anniversary. We're going to, for the next number of moments, relive that experience of 40 summers ago. Where I'd like to start is June 27th, 1976. There was a family, like many here in this room, children of Hungarian survivors who were giving the opportunity to live the dream that their great-grandparents could only dream of. And what was that? To come to Israel. George and Renee Rivka Carfunkel. Many of you know who they are. They spent time there. And it's Sunday morning. It's time to get back to New York to work. They come to Ben Gurion, an Air France Flight 139, which was supposed to be a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Paris. On their way to New York, they were going to visit the famous European city, Paris. And what happened? After their suitcases went through, were already in the cargo hall, as they get up to the Air France desk, they see on the board that the flight is not going directly to Paris. It's going to stop in Athens. And George turns to Renee. Athens, it's the worst security in all of Europe. We're not getting on that plane. And the woman behind the desk says, listen, you want a direct flight to Paris? You're going to have to wait till Monday night. But let me tell you this, your luggage is already in the cargo and we cannot take it out at this time. He turns to his wife. They look at each other. What are they going to do? They've got a 3-month-old baby back in New York. They only were going to spend a day and a half in Paris. They go forward. An Air France Flight 139 leaves Tel Aviv, and it's a beautiful, smooth flight into Athens. And in Athens, 53 new passengers join the plane. For our purposes, we are interested in 4 of them. 2 Germans, Brigitte Kuhlmann, and a man named Wilfried Boos, like Bosi speaker, but it's German. There's an umlaut over the O. Wilfried Boos, we would say. Who were Wilfried Boos and Brigitte Kuhlmann? Members of the infamous Baader-Meinhof gang. The Baader-Meinhof, anti-capitalist, anti-establishment, partnered with some of the most vicious terror organizations across the globe. And who were the 2 others? Palestinians. They got on in Bahrain. In Bahrain, there was no security. They had weapons, they had grenades that they brought with them. They land in Athens and inter-airport. They can go with all of their equipment, concealed in their hand luggage, concealed on their body, and they get on the plane, Air France 139. As Air France 139 hits flying altitude, the 4 of them rush the cockpit. They commandeer the plane. The first time in his life that George ever saw a gun was when Brigitte Kuhlmann stuck it in his chest. They didn't want any men sitting in the aisles. They moved them towards the windows, towards the middle seats, and had women in the aisles because they didn't want someone jumping and trying to tackle them. And what happened? The plane goes on radio silence. Right away, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin is notified. We've got problems. There's over 100 Israelis on that plane. It was actually 93. There were over 100 Israelis on that plane. It's on radio silence, which can mean only one of two things. There's been a plane crash, or the plane's been commandeered. And what happens? They have no clue where they're going. The plane lands. What they would find out is where? Benghazi, Libya. Muammar Gaddafi, who was a comrade, a supporter, and a friend of the PFLP, the Palestinian Front for the Liberation of Palestine under George Habash, who broke off from Arafat because they didn't believe his methods were harsh enough against the Zionists. And what happened? The plane's refueled. The plane, after being refueled, takes off. And it's an endless, endless time that they're on that plane, having no clue where they're going. It becomes dark. They started in Israel Sunday morning. It's already dark already. All they know when they finally land is, it seems like tens and tens, it would turn out to be 100 black soldiers, are all over the tarmac. They have no clue where they are. They're in sub-Sahara Africa, in Kampala, Uganda, at the Entebbe airport. And before they get off the plane, a selection is done. Everyone's passports are handed over. And there's a determination. What happens? 89 people are called. They have Israeli passports. 4 conspicuous-looking Jews, like George and Renee, because he had a yarmulke on his head. The 89 Israelis, the 4 conspicuous-looking Jews, a selection is done. And they are quarantined in a separate part of the Entebbe airport, the old terminal of Entebbe. It's already Monday, the 28th of June, when the world finds out there has not been a plane crash. It has been commandeered by who? By the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, with the aid of the Baader Meinhof gang. 3 other Palestinian terrorists are waiting for them in Entebbe, and they are accompanied by Idi Amin Dada, one of the 20th century's worst butchers, a man who slaughtered and butchered 300,000 of his fellow Ugandans. Now the world knows. And what are our demands? $5 million in cash and 53 of our comrades in arms to be emancipated. 40 Palestinians held by the Zionists in Israeli prisons. 6 Palestinians held by the Jordanians in Jordanian prisons. 6 members, including Baader himself, of the Baader Meinhof gang, held in West German prisons, and 1 other. The deadline is Thursday at noon, Thursday, July 1st. We don't have our brothers in arms emancipated, the hostages die. Let the world know. Why did they go to Kampala, Uganda, of all places? Because today, a name that every one of us is familiar with, the specially elite unit known as Sayeret Matkal, was a classified group that no one knew about. It was headed at the time by, again, a man whose name was classified, who would go on to become the most decorated soldier in the history of the state of Israel, Ehud Barak. And 2 years earlier, under George Habash, a Sabina Boeing airline flight 707 had been commandeered, and it was taken to Ben Gurion. The Sayeret Matkal, dressed as what? As crewmen. People coming in to clean out the toilets, people coming in, engineers, to give them supplies, to refuel the plane, came on the plane, and miraculously were able to save that plane. They were able to take care of the terrorists and save the hostages. The man who was to run this mission, Wadi Haddad said, we're going to take this as far as we can from Israel. They're not going to pull this stunt on us again. And who did they have? A very willing partner in Idi Amin Dada. The man who, when Golda Meir decades ago had sent Israeli water engineers to teach the Ugandans how to feed their starving people with drip irrigation. Israelis had come and helped develop the country. In 1972, with the OPEC oil embargo, when the Arabs paid more, not only did the Arabs bring more money, but they brought the following. They brought Russian equipment. And now he had a whole air force of 11 Russian MiGs sitting on that tarmac. He threw the Israelis out in 1972. The man who had been the recipient of such Israeli aid on all levels, the Kafui Tov, the ingrate that he was, he threw Israel out. And now he was a supporter of the Palestinians. So what happens? The world is focused on Israel. The Labor government, and there are three names to know here. The Prime Minister was Yitzhak Rabin, Defense Minister Shimon Peres, and the Ramat Kal was the famous Mata Gur, General Mata Gur of Six-Day War fame. The Security Cabinet is meeting because the world is turned to Israel. The West Germans have said, we do not want to emancipate Badr, but we will follow your lead. There are three harebrained plans that Shimon Peres is pushing, military plans that none of them make sense. One of them is we're going to send 1,000 troops into Uganda. Yeah, you'll take over Kampala, the capital city, and in the meantime the hostages will all be dead. A second possibility is we have good relations with Kenya, who despises the neighbor of Uganda, who despises Idi Amin. We'll do an amphibious assault from Lake Victoria, which is close to Kampala. What's the problem with that? Unlike those of us who live here in the United States, where unless you're a 2-year-old baby, alligators are not aggressive, don't attack people. Lake Victoria was loaded with crocodiles. We'll do an amphibious assault and our best boys will be killed in the water. They had nothing. They called in the two opposition leaders, the leader of the Cherut, which is today the Likud, Menachem Begin, and Yitzhak Navon. And Rabin sits with them. He says, look, we have 250-some hostages, 89 Israelis. What are we going to do? We're going to have to start at least negotiating. We have to at least negotiate and try. We don't have an alternative. And talk about a leader. Talk about a great Jew. Begin, followed by Navon, said to him, Prime Minister Rabin, this is not a time for partisan politics. Whether we agree or disagree is irrelevant. You will have our backing now, and whether it goes well or it goes catastrophically, you will have our backing. This is a time for Achdut, for the Jewish world to be together. And what happened? The negotiations started. You all know the New York Post. No one can do a headline like the New York Post. Thursday morning, the New York Post reads in big, black, bold letters, Israel surrenders. Israel surrenders. Why? The last country that would not negotiate, would not capitulate, would not appease terrorism, is now capitulated. And what happens? The negotiations begin. As a function of this, the PFLP frees all non-Israeli and non-conspicuously looking Jewish hostages. Over 140 hostages. There's an Air France plane waiting in Nairobi. It's called in, and the hostages on Wednesday are taken to Paris. Who do they meet in Paris? Before their families, as well as French intelligence, the Mossad is waiting. And the Mossad, after interviewing almost all of the 140 hostages that have been released, comes to two conclusions. One, with 95% certainty, is positive, and one is abysmal. What are the conclusions they come to? All along, Idi Amin, in front of the cameras, has been saying, I had nothing to do with this. We can't do anything. My soldiers can't even come in because the place is booby-trapped. The terrorists have booby-trapped this. Don't play anything. And he said to his Israeli connections, don't get smart. Don't play games. I can't even send my soldiers in. It's very clear in the minds of the hostages, it's not booby-trapped. Yes, they set up coffee cans and all kinds of things. In fact, leave it to one of the characters. One of the hostages actually stuck his pen in it, and coffee beans came out. So it's clear the place is not booby-trapped. But here's number two. Idi Amin Dada, as Israel's worst fears proved, was in cahoots with the terrorists. We're not dealing with 4 terrorists. There's 7 terrorists in the VIP lounge, and there are tens in tens. We don't know if it's 80, 100, 120. It turned out it was 100. There are tens of Ugandan soldiers, all quartered in the second floor of the old terminal. Now you're dealing with a military operation. It's not 4 terrorists anymore. Here is where the miracle begins. Here is where the miracle in our lifetime, in Ima's lifetime, begins. There are 5 phenomena there. Number 1, when Israel was there was an Israeli firm who was given architectural blueprints to build what? The old terminal, which was then the new terminal of the Entebbe airport in Kampala. And you know what a pack rat is? You know these people, they'll never throw out a newspaper? This guy didn't get the bid. Contrary to the rumors that Solel Bonet built it, it was not built by Solel Bonet. The terminal was built by an Italian firm. But he was a pack rat. He saved every set of architectural blueprints that he ever bid a contract on. And what did he do? He provided the blueprints to the IDF. Now there's a chance. And based upon what Mossad learned in Paris, there have been no structural changes done to the building. The VIP lounge is where it was, so we know where the terrorists are. We know the entrances. There are 2 entrances on this side, 2 on that. There's no change in walls, in staircases. Now we can at least set up a Hollywood set and try to practice. Number 1. Number 2, one thing they received from all the hostages, every time Idi Amin came, he came with the following. He drove in a black stretch Mercedes limousine with the Ugandan flag, followed by Ugandan elite forces in 2 Range Rovers, followed by the camera crew. So every time he's come, wait a second, we can do an element of surprise. We'll get a black stretch Mercedes limousine, and we'll get 2 Range Rovers. Throughout the whole state of Israel, there was no black stretch Mercedes limousine. They couldn't find one. What did they do? They found somebody who had an old model, white stretch Mercedes limousine. They came to him. They're not going to tell him top secret what's happening. They came to him and said, you know what? We're doing a movie. We're paying the actors by the hour, the directors, the producers, the whole camera crew. We'll give you whatever you want for this car. We need it. Can we have it for a week or so? We may tweak it a little bit. We'll get it back to you in even better condition. He stopped them. He said, pay me for this piece of junk? You kidding? He says, I wish you better luck with it than I have. They had no clue what he was talking about. Found out they had to bring in a mechanic who then they had to sequester and quarantine. The thing needed a new alternator. It wouldn't start. They put in a first starter. On the practice run Friday night, the car didn't start. They had to put in a second starter. Now they saw what he was dealing with, but they did a quick paint job. They had the mechanics. They had to sequester them. So now at least they had the element of surprise. Number 3, and this is something that Brigadier General Shapir is very familiar with because he's been involved over the years with. The first time from the state of Georgia, Israel had just procured these Mamazetzers, the C-130 Hercules. The C-130 Hercules is a transport, it's a monster. It can go very far distances. You can put tanks in it. You can put Humvees with RPGs in it. You can put troop movements in it. Now they had, headed by a son of survivors, Shuki Yoshua Shami. So at least if we have to do a military operation, we can take them there. But here's the problem. You know what the problem is? We can get our most elite soldiers there, but the Hercules can't turn around and get back. We could save the hostages if all goes well, and we'll be stuck in Uganda. So what did they have to do? Only one country they had a chance with in terms of refueling. Kenya. They couldn't talk to the prime minister. They had contacts with 2 government officials. And they called them. They said, look, we don't know if we're going to do this. Right now, the negotiations are a mess. We are not going to release a Palestinian who's got Jewish blood on his hands. We're willing to allow Palestinians to be released from prison, but the terrorists have said no, all 40 that they've asked of us. And we are stuck, and the negotiations are not going well. If we have to do a mission, we're going to need to refuel. We beg of you, what will it take for us if we have to do this to refuel? And please don't say anything to anyone until we know it's a go. A number of hours later, the Kenyans got back to them. 2 conditions. Number 1, you never called us. We never had this conversation. You land, we'll say that what were we supposed to do? It was a humanitarian thing. You had wounded, you had dead, you showed up. So we never had a discussion. Number 2, Idi Amin Dada for years has tried to bring down his government. He hates us. He is a mortal enemy. It doesn't matter what we say. Idi Amin, sitting over on the other side of Lake Victoria, has 11 Russian MiGs. You're going to take out those Russian MiGs. We don't stand a chance unless you take out the Russian MiGs. What happened? A man who, again, his name was classified at that time. He went on to be someone who everyone in this room knows. Shaul Mofaz. Now the mission expanded. His role in the mission is to take out the MiG-4s and the MiG-11 and the MiG-13s. So now we've got a totally different mission. Next, we said that the head of the IDF, the Ramatkal, was General Matagur. Matagur said the following to the security cabinet. And remember one thing, Shimon Peres, his legacy in terms of his role in Dimona will be eternal for the Jewish people, in terms of providing something that can respond to an existential threat. But Shimon Peres, even though he's a minister of defense, he has no respect. He's not a military man. He never led troops in a serious way. So every time he's saying we can't negotiate standing up, they poo-poo him. Rabin does not have a lot of respect for his opinion. If Matagur gets behind something, it's a totally different story. What happened? Matagur said, you're going to take my elite boys, the finest of the state of Israel, you're going to take them and get them killed on the tarmac. These Hercules C-130s, they can't land in the dark. What do you think? The Ugandans are going to have the lights on with a big sign, Shalom Aleichem, and sing Hava Nagila when we land? How are they going to land in the dark? I want to see these boys. And Yoshua Shami and his boys got together and said, how are we going to do this? You talk about, Yiddish Asecha, Israeli ingenuity. He said, wait a second. One thing we know on the radar, we know the following. Water bounces back one way. Sand bounces back on radar another way. And something which is totally solid and dense, like tarmac or cement, it bounces back a different way. Let's play off the radar. Let's see the way the radar bounces back. And he said, Matagur, he said, okay, I'm speaking in English. I'm sure he said it a lot differently in Hebrew. He says, okay, young whippersnapper, I want to see you do it yourself. We're going Thursday night, July 1st for a practice run. And I'm going to be sitting in the cockpit with you. They leave central Israel. They do the landing in Sharm el-Sheikh. And what happens? He's about to land this monster C-130. It's looking good. He turns on the lights about 30 meters from the ground, and he sees he's crashing right into a fence post. He takes that big monster. Matagur says, come on, kid. Circle around, try it again, and get it right the next time. He circles around, comes back. He thinks this is sand on this side. He thinks this is, turns on the lights about 30 meters before hitting the ground. Second time he got it. Thursday night, Matagur comes back to the security cabinet, to Rabin's cabinet. He says, I will give my approval. I think we got a shot. The leader of the mission, Ehud Barak, has been taken off the mission because there is no mission if we can't work with the Kenyans. And his relationship with the Kenyans is crucial. So what happens? Number 2, Another elite member of Sayeret Matkal, who's been in the Negev, is called up on Thursday. What is his name? No one's heard this name before. Yonatan Netanyahu. There's one thing we know about him. His father is the preeminent historian on the Inquisition. The Spanish and Portuguese Inquisition lasted for 300 years into the 18th century. And Ben-Zion Netanyahu, who is a disciple of Zev Jabotinsky, is the world's preeminent historian. One time when he was a visiting professor at Harvard, his oldest son, Yonatan, got a degree in philosophy there. His middle son, Binyamin, Bibi, one time when he was in America teaching at Penn, Bibi got a degree at MIT. And this kid, who's about to be engaged to his girlfriend, Bruria, and this young man, who's about to finish his duty as one of Israel's elite soldiers, number 2 to Ehud Barak, he's called up from the Negev for one more mission. What happens? It's Thursday night. At that time, Israel did not have as diversified different units in the IDF. The top unit was known as, which all of you are familiar with, Tzanchanim. The Tzanchanim were up on the Golan Heights. And there's a young man by the name of Surin Hershko. Surin is not a Yiddish nor is it a Hebrew name. What is Surin? A Romanian name. Surin and his parents, there was one communist dictator who would deal with Israel. He dealt with the Arabs and with the Zionists. You know why? Because that communist dictator was for sale. And who was that? Ceausescu. And we all know of Ceausescu's Jews. The Hershkos were sold to Israel. They had just come. Young man, it's his honor, it's his privilege, and it's his duty to give to his people in his homeland. The boys up on the Golan Heights on Thursday night, July 1st, they're told the following. Boys, there's a group of Egged buses coming up. Take your basic essentials, take your guns, get on the buses. The buses drive down from the Golan Heights. It takes 4 hours to get to the base in central Israel. It's probably 2 a.m. Boys, get some sleep. You get about 4 hours to get some sleep, and then we are in action. They're not told what. They just know they're going to be working tomorrow. They wake up early in the morning, and under the leadership of Yonatan Netanyahu, a plan is developed with the help of others, but he's the one running it. And all day they practice, they go over everyone's roles. Friday night they do a practice run. We're now Friday night, July 2nd. And keep in mind the following. What has happened back in Uganda with the hostages? Because Israel was negotiating, Idi Amin encouraged the PFLP, delay the deadline from noon, July 1st, because there is a negotiation, to Sunday morning, 8 a.m., July 4th. Why did he choose Sunday morning, July 4th, 1976 as a new deadline? Why did he choose that? 2 reasons. Number 1, Idi Amin was the president of the Union of African Nations, and the biannual conference was going to be taking place in Mauritius. He had finished his 2-year term. He was going to be transferring the gavel to Mauritius. He would be gone from Thursday through Shabbos, through Saturday, July 3rd. Nothing's happening when I'm not there. Nothing's happening when I'm not in front of the cameras. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, the whole world had converged on the United States of America. The bicentennial of the United States of America. The Queen of England herself, Queen Elizabeth with her husband, they came. The heads of the German, of the French, the whole world was there. We're going to take the spotlight from the West. We're going to take the spotlight from President Ford and the US of A. So what's happening? Friday night, they do the practice run. It is an abysmal, abominable failure. Okay, guys, it was 55 minutes. You do this, you'll get the hostages killed, you'll get yourselves killed. The car didn't start, this went wrong, that went wrong. And what did they do all Friday night while the soldiers went to sleep? They sat with Yoni, and they tweaked it. And they changed it. And they did some things differently. And they said, we're going to try this again. And we're going to get it right. If we do the tweaks and the changes, we have a shot at this working. And they reported back to Mata Gur, we think we can make it work. Here's the problem. It's Shabbos morning, July 3rd. They have no choice, whether it's approved or not approved. They have to take off from Central Israel at 11:30 a.m. They've got to get to Sharm el-Sheikh by 3:30, have been refueled, and they have to take off from Sharm el-Sheikh, the southernmost point in Israel, to get where? To get to Kampala, to Entebbe Airport by 12:10 a.m. Why 12:10 a.m.? The element of surprise. From Israeli intelligence, they knew the last commercial flight coming into Kampala and Entebbe is a British Airways flight supposed to land at midnight. We'll give it 10 minutes of leeway. We'll come on its tail. That's number one. Number two is we've got to do it in the dark. We know from the intelligence, from the hostages, that most of them go to sleep at night. We have a better shot at night. So what happens? The Security Cabinet has still not approved this. And there's a lot of weighing back and forth. The planes take off. The 4 planes take off in 4 different directions because there are Russian ships in the Mediterranean. They have to fly under radar even to Sharm el-Sheikh, and they meet there. Flying is so low to the ground against all of that, what's that called when you have turbulence? Literally, almost every soldier threw up. In fact, one of the soldiers threw up so bad, was so dehydrated, they couldn't even give him IVs. He was supposed to be with Yoni. They took him off. They had to take one of the guys who was going to be on the other planes, having a different role. They put him in, and on the way to Uganda, they would teach him what he was supposed to do in his role. They refuel. They take off at 3:30. They are on radio silence. You can't go directly to Uganda. You got enemy territory in Egypt. You got enemy territory in Libya. What did they do? Flying literally 110, 120 feet off the ground under radar, they were flying across the Yam Suf. Flying across the Yam Suf, and they would cross the African continent through Eritrea, because they thought of all the countries, none of them would give them permission, but Eritrea would have the least amount of defenses and missile defense. So what happens? One word they will hear if the Security Cabinet approves it. This mission is not a go. But they have no choice but to take off at 3:30 p.m. At 5:30 p.m., they hear the code word. It's a go. They can't even talk amongst themselves. That's why Yoshua Shami said every half hour or so, some of the other planes would pull up beside us just to let us, so we knew that we were together. And what happened? It's a go. At that point, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, calls in the 2 opposition leaders, Menachem Begin of the Cherut and Yitzhak Navon. He said, listen, we have made the following determination. I don't know how they made this determination, but the definition of failure versus success is 25 dead. Between the hostages and the soldiers, if 25 or more die, that will be the end of this government. That will be the implosion of the Rabin-Peres government. That is what we've done, and we've made a determination that we have a 60 to 70% chance that we will have success. The negotiations are not going anywhere. Begin said to Rabin, and there were witnesses that told the military historian Saul David about this, Prime Minister, whether this is the worst failure or whether this is the greatest success, now, a month from now, and 10 years from now, we will take the stance that we support you. This is not a time for partisan politics. This is not a time to backstab you. And Rabin is he's a military man, a stoic man. Rabin's eyes welled up with tears. Rabin didn't hug anybody. He hugged Begin at that moment. And Navon supported Begin. They're off. The plane touches the tarmac. You all know the story over Lake Victoria, the thunderstorms, how it was rattling and shaking. Once they came through Lake Victoria, the plane touches a tarmac at 12:11 a.m., Sunday, July 4th. Yoshua Shami Shuki slows down the plane. The boys get out, and they put out these electric lights, these battery-operated lights. Because as it did happen, when the Ugandans knew what was going on, they shut off all the lights on the tarmac. But at least the lights were on for the first plane, and they could set up temporary lights for the second, third, fourth plane. Here's the plan. As he's about to come to a halt, he brings down the belly of the plane. This time the Mercedes starts, followed by the 2 Range Rovers. Yoni and the first crew is off. The second crew in that plane runs to the new terminal. You must understand, the old terminal is 1 kilometer from the new terminal. Even if they miraculously can save the hostages, they can be killed by the Ugandan soldiers. They have to commute them, transport them a whole kilometer till they get to the new terminal. So what happens? They have to make sure that they can secure the new terminal, and they have to make sure they can take care of any Ugandans in the tower. They're off. The plan is this. This was the strategy based on Friday night's debacle. If the Ugandans shoot at us, we take the bullets. We don't fight back. This is not a firefight against the Ugandans, because we've got to get as soon as we can to the hostages in the greatest element of surprise. Don't stop for a fight with the Ugandans. That's the plan. What happens? The Mercedes, followed by the 2 Range Rovers, is moving along. 2 Ugandan soldiers get in the way and try to stop them. Yoni puts a silencer on his pistol. He takes out 1. The other Ugandan soldier jumps out of the way. After he jumped out of the way, now he starts with the machine gun firing at them. One of the boys in the Range Rovers kills him with a machine gun. But the Ugandan machine gun and an Israeli machine gun, now noise is made. Now the total element of surprise is gone. It's been destroyed. What happens? Yoni says, floor this thing. And they start moving. And they're flying. They get to the terminal, and here's the plan. There's different groups. One for this entrance, where they know there's going to be 2 terrorists guarding this entrance. One for the other entrance, there's going to be 2 terrorists. You got to get those 4 terrorists first. Point number 1. Point number 2, if we get those 4 terrorists, get to the VIP lounge where the other terrorists are before they come out with grenades or machine guns. Point number 3, if we get to the VIP lounge and we get those terrorists, we've got to get upstairs. We've got to get upstairs before the Ugandan soldiers come down and start shooting the hostages. These are the 3 goals. The only way this can be managed, Yoni's going to have to put his life at stake, because everyone's under the protection of a building and a roof. He's going to have to be out on the tarmac, exposed to the Ugandan soldiers. You need someone who can see what's happening at this entrance, at that entrance, the soldiers getting through to the VIP lounge. And Yoni sits up there. He is a sitting duck. And that was the plan. He's an open target. Early on, he takes a bullet. The Chovesh gets to him and says he's not going to make it. Because if the bullet had gone through, it's one thing. The bullet has just ripped apart his vital organs. He's in the process of dying. They get in the one entrance. They get in the other entrance, and they get the 2 hostages at each door. However, the 2 terrorists at each door, they get them. However, out of the VIP lounge, 3 Palestinians start to get out. One of them, who's referred to as Carlos, who was a Palestinian living in Peru, he met them in Uganda. He takes a grenade and he lets it go. Now you have to understand, when George and Rivka, spending the week there, they were with 2 other couples, Dr. and Mrs. Pascal Cohn, and a 3-level colonel of the IAF. What he did when after they commandeered the plane, after it left Athens, he literally ripped up his military card and he swallowed it. He didn't want anyone knowing he was military. But he said to them this. He said, listen, if our boys come, and we hope, God willing, they will, if they come, one thing you've got to do, you've got to crawl and get into the bathroom. They said, why? They said, look at this. This is carpeted. You've got mattresses all over. You've got blankets. This place is flammable. This place is a fire waiting to happen. You don't understand what happens when there's a firefight if a grenade goes off. You get to the bathroom. It's a cement floor. And that's what they did. They saw Brigitte Pullman's head literally flying off from the bullets. Now what happened? When Carlos, the Palestinian from Peru, let the grenade go, that part of the room was on fire. There were a number of young hostages sleeping there. One of them was a fine young French Jew. His parents had come to France from North Africa. His name was Jean-Jacques Mimouni. Jean-Jacques was one of these guys who was being mechazik everyone. He would take the food from the Ugandans and feed the hostages. When people were depressed, he would try to uplift their spirits. Well, these hostages are on fire. They got no choice. They're burning up. Even though the members of the IDF had on bullhorns, they had bullhorns, stay down, stay down, they were saying in Hebrew, we're going to shoot anything that's moving. He and a couple of girls got up, and they started running because they were on fire. He was hit by 7 bullets, all of ours. He was killed by friendly fire. In the post-mortem, when they assessed this, if they had done it again, they would have done the exact same thing. You see a young man running at you with dark pigmentation after you've told everyone to stay down. He was killed. Many of the people that Joel and Rabbi Spinner work with, what Elie Wiesel referred to as the Jews of silence, before Brezhnev died, before Leonid Brezhnev died, there was a short window when Russians were allowed to come to Israel. A couple that came with their children were the Borachovich family. And Ida Borachovich was killed, she was killed by a Palestinian bullet. We've now got 3 Kedoshim. They get to the stairwell before the Ugandans come down. And the soldiers stop the Ugandans from firing. They take out the Ugandans. It's a firefight. Rivka, Renee Carfunkel, who's being covered by her husband in the bathroom, the door opens. They don't know what's going on. Is this a Palestinian coming to kill them? Is this a Ugandan soldier coming to kill them? Or is this a Jew coming to rescue them? She said the sweetest word she's ever heard in her life. A young man, a member of Yoni's team with a kippah on his head, walks in. Shavua Tov, we're here to bring you home. Shavua Tov, we're here to bring you home. The funny part of this story, because they had to bring Peugeot trucks to transport the hostages from the old terminal a whole kilometer to the new terminal, and the soldiers risked their lives. They sat on the bunks of these trucks to take any hits that would be coming from the towers. What happened? You know what happened? They said, immediately, everyone get into the trucks, we have to get you out of here to a secured area. So they're Americans, they listened. She didn't have shoes on, nothing, they jump into Peugeot trucks. The Israelis, no, I gotta get my camera, no, I gotta get my purse, I gotta get my wallet, and they're screaming at them, get in the trucks, and everybody's, so they get them. What took the longest amount of time? The count. He's 92 years old today, he's still alive. The captain of the Air France plane, I'm not saying this about his crew, but he was offered the option of freedom. He said, a captain stays with the ship. A captain goes down with the ship. And along with 93 Jews, there were 12 members of the Air France team. They made sure that he had counted personally all of his 12 members of the crew, and that they had a very hard time getting counts. One of the people that we brought here to Los Angeles for B'nai Akiva that I interviewed was Ilan Hartuv. He was going with his mother, Dora Bloch, to London. They were going to be celebrating his brother, her son's wedding. On Friday in the terminal, when they were fed by the Ugandans, she choked on a piece of meat. And the Ugandans couldn't get it out, and the Jews couldn't get it out. They moved her to the hospital. They took it out on Friday. And she was supposed to come back Shabbos morning to the hostages. The Ugandan Minister of Health, who despised, who hated Idi Amin, but on the other hand, who was scared to death of him, he got in and he doctored the charts. He thought he tried to save her life. She would be much safer in a hospital than with the terrorists. And he kept her in the hospital thinking he was helping her. You know what happened? In the aftermath, Idi Amin sent his goons in. Dora Bloch was 73 years old. They grabbed her by her hair, they ripped her down the stairs, they threw her in a car, they put a number of bullets in her head and dumped her, and it was a known secret, the area where her and other political enemies of the state had been killed. When Idi Amin 3 years later in 79 was overthrown, Dora Bloch, Israel sent, they had her dental records, they sent forensic experts to Uganda, and they were able to remove her remains. They found her remains where everyone said she was. They removed the remains, and she was given Kfuras Yisrael, internment in Israel. Number 4. Remember we said the practice run took 55 minutes? The goal for this mission from touchdown to takeoff was 1 hour? 51 minutes. 51 minutes, 3 casualties. Yoni, Ida Borachovitz, and Jean-Jacques Mimoni. The plane had to stop for refueling. There was no option to refuel in Uganda. They came to Kenya. The Kenyans at that point called up the Prime Minister. He was woken. It was 1:30, 1:45 in the morning. He says, "We never had this conversation. You didn't call me." Slams down the phone. We got 2 hours to refuel and get out of here. Pascal Cohn, like others, it was friendly fire. He took a bullet to the hip, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. They had to take him off. Mrs. Cohn said, "I want to go with him." No, don't worry. We have Israeli doctors here. We have an Israeli medical team. Pascal Cohn died on the table, not from the wound. He had a coagulation problem, and literally he bled to death on the table. Number 5. They take off. They're told, we're going over enemy territory. We're flying under radar. You can't speak. Everyone is given earplugs. And George and Rivka are standing like this, holding on to straps. They don't know who this is, but there's a dead Israeli soldier. They're saying to him, this is an exact English translation of what Menachem Begin said in Knesset, Monday, July 5th. And please understand one thing. Menachem Begin was a Litvish Jew. He grew up in Brisk, in Belarus. His whole family was wiped out. He was actually in Poland in 39. And if you were a Jew in Poland in 39 after September, what's your whole historical background? World War I. World War I, the Bolsheviks, the Russian soldiers were monsters, were barbarians. The German soldiers treated us much better. Yes, Hitler is terrible, but the German people, educated, cultured. Most Polish Jews decided to stay in Poland, not flee for the Russian boundary of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Begin, who had a tremendous insight, he moves, he flees. When he comes to the Russian side, he's given 2 choices. You either adopt the communist way of life and you can stay here in Russian-controlled area, or if not, we send you to Siberia. Begin would never adopt communism. Begin survived the war in Siberia while the rest of his family was annihilated, along with Polish and along with what we call Litvish Jewry. Begin, please understand that background behind this speech. Not since the Six-Day War has our nation known such a profound sense of achdut. We shared a common anxiety and a sense of fraternal love for our people, emanating from the resolve to rescue our brothers and our sisters in peril. Ulai, perhaps, it was because of this achdut that we found within ourselves the capacity to mount such a momentous operation, a rescue mission unprecedented in gallantry and daring. And then he paid tribute to the first time for the world to know who this man was that risked his life for his people, Yonatan Netanyahu, that I know of from records. Over 220 baby boys, as well as Rita's son, have been named Yonatan. Yours as well. Yoni as well. There's probably many more, but that I know of, over 220 baby boys have been named after Yonatan Netanyahu. And he says the following, Chashmonaim risen anew. Not for 2,200 years have we had the schut from the Almighty to be able not to be at the whims of someone else, not to be at the whims of some foreign empire, but to have people like Brigadier General Shapir looking after us, the Malachi Hashem. Then he turns to Rabbi. You and I, we belong to different political factions. Our hashkafat olam, our outlooks differ, but not today. On this day, Mr. Prime Minister, I salute you. I salute you for what you have done. And Mr. Perez, I salute you as well as all the members of the Labor Cabinet and everyone involved in the most difficult decisions that a nation's leaders can possibly make. But you, Mr. Prime Minister, you are the leader of a team. and I have some knowledge of being a leader of a team. I say that while all of your colleagues have a share in the decision-making responsibility, upon your soldiers, upon your shoulders, rests an extra mashihu, an extra morsel. And who can be shokel? Who can weigh that extra morsel of achrayut? And this is the last and most famous part of the speech. Not 30 years ago did the Jewish people undergo the selection of Dr. Mengele and the doctors in Auschwitz. When a finger pointed to the right meant Jewish men, women, and children were condemned to death. When a finger pointed to the left meant a life of slave labor. Then there was no one to save them. Now there was. Now we declare for the world to hear, never again. Our generation has taken a shvuah, a solemn oath, consecrated in the blood of our slain mothers, the blood of our butchered fathers, and the blood of our asphyxiated babies. Never again will the blood of a Jew be shed with impunity. Never again will Jewish honor be prey. Let the world know, if anyone, anywhere, is persecuted or humiliated or threatened or abducted or is in any way endangered simply because he or she is a Jew, then Israel will marshal all of its strengths to come to their aid with the help of the Almighty. With the help of the Ribono Sh'olam, we will marshal all of our strength and bring them to the safe haven, to our homeland, Eretz Yisrael. This, he concluded, is the message of Entebbe. We live 40 years later. One of the great miracles in our lifetime, where we saw the Hashgacha, where we saw what our people had been through for millennia, and how this story ended differently. This is the land, this is the nation, this is the people that Ima Nissel built, that she gave her life for, that she gave her life, her time, her energy, and that she raised her children and grandchildren for. May her neshama be tzrur b'tzrur hachayim, and may her neshama be a schut for her family and her grandchildren.
It's a tribute to Entebbe. Rafi and Rivka asked me to sing a very special song. It's called the Partisan Songs. The Partisan Songs was written by members of the Partisan, by a Jew member of the Partisans in 43. And the Partisans, when they used to attack the Germans, they used to sing it on the way to attack the Germans. And the words are just amazing to an inspiration. Let's start.
Nicht keinmal als du gehst den letzten Weg, Himmelbleien verstellen bläue Tag, kommen weg doch unser ausgewählte Schuhe, zweiter beugt und unser Tag mir seinen Tod. Kommen weg doch unser ausgewählte Schuhe, zweiter beugt und unser Tag mir seinen Tod. Im Flammenland bis weiten Land und Schnee, bekommen mit unser Pein, mit unser Weg. Und wo gefallen ist, das spritzt von unser Blut, sprotzen, wenn dort unser Ruhe, unser Wut. Und wo gefallen ist, das spritzt von unser Blut, sprotzen, wenn dort unser Ruhe, unser Wut. Geschrieben ist mit Blut und mit Blut. Sie mit kein Lied fein worden trägt. Das Erfolg zwischen Fallen nicht gewähnt. Das wird gesungen mit Naganes in die Welt. Das hat Erfolg zwischen Fallen nicht gewähnt. Das wird gesungen mit Naganes in die Welt. Oh,